and welcome to my channel where I talk to successful IB graduates and supportive parents about their experience of the IB diploma. Today I'm talking with Cleo Kartalis, who is keen to share with you what she learned about coping with the stress of the IB. Cleo, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Talk to us about the 3 most stressful moments of the IB for you.
Absolutely. So the 3 moments were as follows. The first was university application. The second was preparing for deadlines, be that for the extended essay, internal assessments, whatever the IB throws at you. And then the third one was the exam itself.
Let's take it one by one. Why was applying to university particularly stressful for you?
So for me, applying to universities was exceptionally stressful because my expectations really didn't match the reality. I waited for months and months and months, culminating to a major long-term stressor throughout, especially my IB2 year, that didn't necessarily have the kind of ending that I thought it would have, according to the plan that was what I was constantly told for reassurance.
Did you feel alone in feeling this way?
No, actually this was a sentiment that a lot of my peers, be that if they were applying for biology, medicine, law, political science, even art, we all had a very different reality from what we expected to find. There's just a lot more that goes into the process of applying that I think that initially we kind of just think we write a personal statement, we edit it, we send it, but in reality there's a lot more that goes into an application.
Do you want to give some examples?
So, for examples, you have to meet with multiple coordinators, you have to decide on what university you're going to apply for, and then based on your IB and on your overall kind of the package, as we call it, that you want to send in, you will then have to really talk also with your parents. There's just a lot goes into it. Even economics now in current day situation, you really have to think of every single step. And these are major steps. And even the fact that you're thinking about these things, that in itself, the idea in itself is extremely daunting. I think a lot of the times just the idea of it is daunting, combined with the fact that something that you'd think would be a very simple, easy, or relatively painless process that becomes incredibly complex, that doesn't have a qualified, definite, positive ending, can create a lot of stress.
So based on your experience, what advice would you give to IB students about the application process?
The number one advice that I'd give is that you need to understand that it's a very competitive environment that you're entering in. So that yes, you might not have a guaranteed positive ending, but you need to still remain motivated and not allow a potential rejection, which even the language can have a very negative connotation and be very demotivating. You need to always prioritize your own sanity in a very kind of real way, and to always ensure that you're taking care of yourself, and to kind of just go with the flow as much as possible. I think that a lot of time, just to add on to that, we can get caught into ideas or thoughts where we say, what went wrong? What did I do wrong a lot of the time? And I think it's really important to take into consideration, and also to make sure that you surround yourself with people that are actually positive and that will actually listen to what you have to say. Even if you feel like you're just moaning and you're being negative, just expelling that negative energy, I think a lot of the time is extremely cathartic and will help you in the long term. Also, don't ever think that you've exhausted all options. Even if you genuinely believe that you have no other option, there is always someone or somewhere that will be available, and there's always going to be something that you'll be able to do that will be just as, if not more, fulfilling than whatever your prior plan that we all have was. So just, I guess, be malleable, be flexible, and don't just have a plan A, have a plan D, E, F, etc.
So what was your plan A?
My plan A was going to study law in the UK. But I also, however, applied to the US. I applied to courses that were not specifically law, but had a direct link or a direct connection to law. So that in that way, I was able to have a little bit more leverage. And although my plan A didn't necessarily come into fruition, I can comfortably say now, a year after the IB, having already finished a year at university, that I am 100% confident I made the right decision. And that's not something that I would be able to tell you come like in the exams in May. So the number one tip that I have for you today is that success is a subjective interpretation. For me, for example, going into the IB, I had one idea of success, but that changed by the end of my IB 2 years, and that has changed a year on. And it will constantly change. It's a natural, organic process, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. What's important to keep in mind is that as success is subjective, it may vary from what your peers are doing, it may vary from their version of success. So just learn to accept that other versions exist and you be happy doing your own thing and find your own way to find success.
You've also told me that cooperative communication was important for you in reducing stress. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So for me, cooperative communication was key in being able to reduce stress when it came to all kinds of deadlines, be that for your CAS, be that for your internal assessment, even for the extended essay. A stress factor that the vast majority, if not all, IB students that I've talked to experience is that even going into the IB, we all had this idea or this preconceived notion that we did not have enough time to perform our utmost best. And that would lead to a really vicious cycle of just denial, of perhaps not being motivated enough to even attempt whatever deadline we had to do. And that would actually amount to extreme levels of stress, more closer to the deadlines that we had for each internal assessment. So for me, the way that I tackled this and the way that I was able to really reduce my stress is to maintain a continuous, open, respectful, cooperative communication with my teacher as well as my parents. Specifically with my teacher, it was extremely important because it allowed me to always keep in contact with them and to be able to just update them on my progress. Even if I hadn't made that much progress, the fact that they were aware of my current state was extremely important for them as well because they were able to then tackle it effectively. I also think that asking your teacher for help is something that's going to be very crucial and something that for me helped me a lot in reducing stress because although they don't have the permission to give you the answer that you're looking for, the teachers will be able to give you a personalized response that will at least give you something that you can go off of to tackle your own problems.
Let's talk about exam stress. I mean, it's almost, by definition, going to be... You
Absolutely.
Cannot avoid stress when you're revising for exams. It is a stressful situation. What can you do about it?
Okay. So something that you actually taught me in IB1 in our history class was that about the pit. I believe that Valia mentioned it in her talk. It's going to be in the description below if you guys want to see it. But what she said is that this pit is an awful situation to be in and that it is going to be uncomfortable. And I think that for me was something that was really able to banish all the negative thoughts, which is my tip, right? You need to be able to banish negative thoughts. You need to accept that it's going to be an uncomfortable situation. It's not going to be the most fun situation, but that it is going to end. What was also very interesting to find out was that it wasn't so much the exams themselves as tests that were particularly stressful, but just the idea of the exams or the potential repercussions that these exams had. So we've all had at least some experience in test taking under time conditions, under time pressure, and I think we really need to understand and be able to tap into our confidence when it comes to that. We are able to retain more information than we thought we'd be able to retain. So in that way, just go in confident and go in just see it as a test in itself and don't necessarily, I think, expand it to the rest of your life. Because that, I think, can then create this negative thoughts, these negative tendencies that are just ruminating constantly of, I'm going to die, this is going to be the worst thing ever. And I think that that is just not particularly conducive to being productive and to also just being happy and healthy, which is, I think, extremely important at all points in the IB.
This is a really important discussion to have because stress is such a major part of the IB. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we finish off?
Absolutely. So you will have been told by your teachers multiple times that stress in the IB is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be very good and it can actually help you be productive. And although I do believe that, though you will be experiencing a lot of different types of stress in the IB. You'll also be functioning within a very relatively high level of stress constantly, which will then have also peak points. And peak points that can also kind of last to a certain extent. But I think it's also important to see, once you leave the IB, the stress that you will have felt through the IB will actually be almost like a reassurance. I think knowing that you have survived and that you've been able to perform under these extremely stressful conditions acts as almost like a reassurance factor of, you know what, I've been in a stressful situation before and I can deal with it. I can cope and I'm going to be all right and I'm going to survive. And really, I think that's all we can kind of hope for.
Watch more videos like this and subscribe to my YouTube channel or go to elenivardanki.com.